Yes.
And good evening, Frankston. Welcome back to another Candid conversation. I'm joined again this evening by Sue Baker, Peter Malone, Justin Turner, and Brad Hill. And tonight we're talking youth policy. We were hoping to have a special guest on this evening, but unfortunately he's been unable to attend tonight due to other commitments. But I do hope to get him on perhaps for one of our Sunday conversations if we can, so just to give his perspective on how things are going. And that was Gerard Philippe. We've all got a number of different ideas about what we think needs to happen in terms of youth policy, and I know that some of us have actually engaged with some young people in the development of our youth policies as well. But I suppose to start us off tonight, one of the things that really shocked me in terms of the term of council that's just finishing up was the decision to cancel the Young Mayors program. And as something that didn't cost an awful lot of money to the council, but was a really quite positive signifier to young people in our community, I was quite stunned. So I certainly would like to see that restored as quickly as possible, and to really look at how we work more closely with our youth council to make sure that it's not just a tokenistic form of representation, but actually it's meaningful as well. Part of my background is also involved in youth participation and child participation through the organisation that I work for, Save the Children. And so I've seen in real action how young people can contribute to the benefit of their communities, but also how they can make our communities so much better. Speaking of which, you'll see behind me, Frankston Lifesaving Club. Shout out to them. They do a fantastic nippers program. Unfortunately, it's on hold at the moment. I do hope we get that back up and running before we hit the end of summer. Sue, I might open with you and your thoughts on what we can do for and with young people within the city of Frankston.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. And what I wanted to start with, and it is a shame Gerard's not with us this evening, because I did a little bit of research on him and his role as mayor, youth mayor, a couple of years ago, and there was some really interesting elements to what he was talking about then, what he was planning to address, and I'd be really interested to hear from him. Things like disengagement, bullying, and mental health issues. And we know those are really key issues currently, exacerbated by COVID-19. And sometimes it takes the perspective of a young person who's dealing with those issues to really give the insights and give the ideas around how they're being impacted and what sorts of things will really help them and add value. So I'd love to hear more. The fact that he'd organised a Brains Trust, so that whole concept of bringing, I think, school captains together from across secondary schools across Frankston, again, a super way to involve people, young people, in organising their thoughts, debating issues, coming together to share opinions, and just being validated that their thoughts and ideas are really useful. So would love to hear a lot more about that. And just the whole process of recruiting for that Young Mayors program and how it all works. So it would be great to hear firsthand from him. I'm really passionate about young people getting involved with things. As a parent, I've been involved with youth sports for a long time, starting out with soccer, got involved with being chair of goal kick when a men's team involved decided to set up a youth program, and that was fabulous. Working with parents who spend a lot of time with their kids doing the taxi runs backwards and forwards, but actually having great skills, but seeing young people really get involved, develop their confidence, develop a range of skills, develop friendships. It's really fabulous to see that at all age groups. And then I've gone on with my son got more involved with basketball, and following that through at all stages from junior through to national representation and through to international representation. Commonwealth Games is another story for another day. But again, seeing what sport does to and for young people at all ages, and really you know, so that's one outlet. It's not the only outlet, but I'm really keen to get young people involved in identifying what's useful to them, what they'd like to do. I perhaps should say that I did think my son might be taken up by the Melbourne Boys Choir at one point. He was spotted age 7. So I thought we might have an arts involvement rather than sport. But anyway, we went sports route. So I think youth, young people getting involved, helping them find their voice and helping them be heard is a really important part of our community work as a group of people anyway, let alone on council.
Great, thanks, Sue. It's probably worth noting as well that Frankston has produced quite a number of high performance athletes as well. In fact, I believe at Frankston High School, there are a couple of buildings there that are named after, one's named after a Paralympian and one's named after an Olympian. So it's worth noting that, you know, Frankston City is a nursery of great sporting talent as well. But we also know that not every young person is interested in sport. And whilst we have great sporting clubs in Frankston across a whole range of different sports, there needs to be more. We can't base a youth policy or a set of youth services around sport. We know that there are issues with youth homelessness in Frankston and on the peninsula as well. Peter, you engage with a lot of young people through the TAFE. What's your view on this?
Yeah, look, over many years, I've engaged with young people at TAFE through the VCAL programs and other programs that we conduct, of course, for education. I like young people. They tend to keep me younger. I tend to, well, you know, to some extent, inexorably, of course, but no, I love engaging with them, and to build a rapport with young people is one of the most rewarding things. To see them actually go through a course, for example, an educational course, and become successful, help them beyond that with their applying for jobs and all of this. It's a huge continuum, but it is tremendously rewarding to me, and it has been over the years. At the TAFE Institute at Chisholm, yeah, we run there's a charitable organisation as part of it called the Caroline Chisholm Foundation, and that's for disadvantaged students. Now, I would say it's of all ages. Predominantly, I think it's younger students who are more disadvantaged usually because their parents can't afford, and I help out sometimes with applications there to the board of the Caroline Chisholm, and we're quite linked to the board. It's got its own separate board, Caroline Chisholm Foundation. But you know, you seek out ways to help people. Recently, a friend of mine's, he used to run a wine shop in Frankston, which I helped out with, of course. I felt it was my duty to help him out, unpaid. But he's now running a sort of an organisation that repatriates used equipment from all big companies, etc. They tend to turn their computer equipment over very frequently. So you know, I've just started this where there'll be donations for young people from you know, disadvantaged families who are not that financially well off. So we actually help in a range of ways down there. And of course, we have our youth counsellors. I'd just like to tell one really quick story that really affected me concerning youth homelessness. When I was, a few years ago, I was teaching VCAL class, and this young lady, she was, I think 16, might have just turned 16 in 1 month or something, you know. So I was doing VCAL. She was about, she won't be identified, but she was about 5'2" or something, and she's a really lovely young person. Very, very pale skinned, just a beautiful young person. Now, in teaching her maths, and I got her over her fear of maths, that was a challenge, but people are very thankful when you get them over their fear of maths, because there's a lot of people who do have a fear of maths. But she told me, I said something about when she could come in and do a retest, because I've been helping her to do that. And she said it's difficult, there's this and there's that. I found out in the course of that conversation, she was couch surfing. And I just thought, oh my goodness. I basically offered, I actually have my next door neighbours, the wife, she's a nurse, and I was so desperate to help this poor kid. I said, look, you can take over my house and I'll move next door, and the wife nurse will move in here. And because you just feel, when you know them personally, and you're really affected by these stories. So I'm really interested in trying to set something up there. We do help out young people who are homeless already at the TAFE through different ways, and getting them off to other services as well as helping them ourselves. And I'd like to strengthen that relationship between state government, local government, and educational institution TAFE, because I think it can work and work really well. So it's the personal achievements and the successes but youth unemployment, they're very, homelessness, they're very vulnerable. And that it's just like the father thing comes out, and you think, oh, you've got to protect these people and help them. So that's a big thing for me to really try and do something about this.
And interestingly, the couch surfing aspect of homelessness is often not captured in the official statistics as well. It's often kind of quite hidden as well. Justin, you've had some of your own unique experiences around youth engagement and youth services. Would you like to share your reflections with us before we move to Brad?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, what I might do, if you don't mind, is the Glenorchy Youth Task Force, which I was one of the foundation members of, have a short write-up about some of the functions and what they do. And I'll qualify it, if that's okay, if I can read this quick statement. Is that okay? All right, so since on their side, the Glenorchy Youth Task Force, or let's just call it a Youth Task Force, is involved in issues affecting young people in their city. It focuses on promoting a positive image of young people in the community, and addresses issues such as community safety, youth health and well-being, including drug and alcohol use, body image, and positive mental health. So the Youth Task Force was established as a special committee of council and is the longest continually operating council-supported youth committee in Australia. The task force that I'm from originally played a key role in the development of a youth leadership toolkit, which is a resource for schools, other councils, and youth groups for developing the leadership capacity of young people. The task force is involved in youth camps, forums, intergenerational activities, and various events, and they also play a big role in the key development of two highly commended programs around binge drinking awareness and mental health resources for young people, in partnership with a couple of other organisations. So this is something I'm very, very passionate about from a first-hand experience. It encompasses young people across our community, from our absolute high achievers that need or want for nothing, right through to the extreme other end as well. Young people that are certainly a lot more disadvantaged, whether or not it's financially or whatever the story may be. But it's not so much around a youth council. It's a similar model, but it is very different in its own sense. It's not about mentoring into a government. Mm-hmm. It's not about policy. It's about participation to enact change. And what it does teach you firsthand is how you can contribute, how you can be heard, and how you can make direct change using the channels through both your local government, your state government, and even moving into the federal space, as well as involving the sort of private sector or charities or other systems that are available to you. So it is an absolutely massive resource for council to have an untapped resource into what's affecting young people. It allows an insight into the homelessness side of things, the mental health side of things, and you're hearing straight from the horse's mouth what we actually need. And I shouldn't say we, because I'm not classed as a young person anymore, but what they need in order for us to help them. And it's not a case of, there's 5 people here that decide what's good for them. They go, this is what we need you to do, and this is what we're going to do. So it's a partnership in order to address, maintain, and move forward. So I think having something like this back on council, and I don't necessarily support having another youth council. It could be a variety of different things, but I think it's an absolute resource that we must have in place.
And I think the thing you're pointing to there, Justin, is irrespective of what it's called or irrespective of what form it takes, it's about having meaningful engagement and consultation.
Absolutely.
And giving young people agency over the decisions that are made that affect them as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have that direct participation, and certainly not any form of tokenism.
Yeah. Brad, you've been in the hot seat previously, some time ago now. Can you tell us a bit about your experience of engaging, or how council engages with young people, or has done to date?
Like a lot of things, the term, youth engagement is very wide, very broad, and there's no one answer, there's no one approach, there's no, single solution here. The big one, obviously, that brings a lot of young people in that we've already touched upon, is sport. And council have I believe, a core responsibility here to provide the sporting facilities around town to accommodate that. So it's really important that we keep up the maintenance and we refurbish and replace sporting pavilions. We keep the sporting fields in tip-top condition. But as you touched upon also, Stephen, there are kids out there that aren't sporty, right? There are young people out there that would never play, a day of sport in their life, and they despise it and they hate it. One of the organisations I became involved in during my time in council all those years ago was the Frankston Chess Club. I don't know if you've heard of the chess club, but they were doing terrific work. I walked in there and there's all these kids all playing chess. The ages of the members went from young kids right up to elderly and all in between, and they're all playing chess against each other all night, right? So there were young people, there were old people together engaging, and having a ball. I thought that was terrific, because it's, that wasn't just helping those kids, but it was also those older people that perhaps also need to engage, that also need to feel included. So, as a councillor, I gave them some visibility and a voice. They were able to attract a few members. But I think what the tricky part is, the challenge is how to engage youth and kids who are disengaged, right? If they aren't motivated, if they're isolated, if they're depressed, if they have all kinds of issues, how do we get those people in? That's where the council needs to work with the relevant agencies, and I think reach out to those agencies that handle young people with those kinds of issues, and bring them together. There's all kinds of organisations. The chess club's just one of them that kids who are disengaged, might be interested in, right? So that's I think the other role of the council here, to act as the glue, as the what's the word, as an agent of coordination, right? To marry it all up. We need to make sure that those kids who are off on the outer rim, if you like, are included.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Brad, in terms of that coordination role. Even if council doesn't have a direct responsibility for some of the service provision, it can certainly have a very strong role in terms of ensuring that service provision is provided. So I note that both Frankston Council and Mornington Shire Council are contributors to Headspace. But I also know that from talking to young people, the Headspace currently has a 6-month wait list for kids who are in crisis today. They don't need to see somebody at Headspace in 6 months' time. They need to be able to see them this week. And this has obviously been impacted quite significantly by the social isolation. I'm sure, you know, most young people, the vast majority of young people, and many who aren't young people, find the social isolation aspect of lockdown and COVID quite telling. And I know how important your school years are to be able to have that social engagement and find your way in the world. And for all intents and purposes, they've not had that for 6 months. And yet the primary provider of those mental health services can't see kids who are in crisis today. And, you know, it's fine for families that have got the resources to go and take them to a private support provider.
Yeah.
But not every kid's got access to that. And I think it's absolutely disgraceful that that's the kind of waiting list that we're talking about. And that's where council should really be stepping up and getting more vocal.
Can I just say something about Headspace and its connection to the TAFE? We have a lot of student counsellors as well, of course, and we have it flow through. Really, it's a one-way flow from the counsellor at Chisholm getting experience with some fairly disadvantaged kids who aren't particularly motivated, etc. So those counsellors flow through to Headspace. I think it's almost always that way. It's not the other way around. And with young people who are not motivated, difficult to get through to, it's the experience of connecting, as I mentioned before, the experience of connecting with those kids. It's a connection you've got to make. And there's all sorts of ways of connecting it. And I recall lots of interesting experiences in the classroom. I mean, how do you connect? I mean, do these kids want to be in the classroom? No, they don't. So what do? You get them out of the classroom. You go off and do practical things, and then you've got some dangers there. But you really have to listen to them. You cannot force them through a gate because they won't go through. You have to connect. And you find that there's leaders amongst these groups of young people. And if you can connect with that leader, it's the old thing, connect with the leader, connect with the others, and you can get somewhere. So connection is important, I think.
And I think it's important as well to think about the range of different needs of young people. So range of different ability levels or disabilities people are working with. And there are different types of environments or opportunities that people are looking for. And so, so if council was able to be a conduit or a facilitator, I don't know what sort of grants would be possible, but it's almost just starting the conversation and making space, bringing people together to talk about options. I think is a place to continue working, or certainly to start up some new avenues.
A lot of effort.
Yeah, look, I think there's an interesting comment that Oliver Hill, candidate for the West Ward, definitely feel like I'm being stalked now, has put up. And Oliver's suggesting that that he thinks that council's actually afraid of young people and sees them only as potential problems or troublemakers. It's certainly something that resonates with when I was a young person in terms of what the general attitude of council was, and we did a lot of work to turn that around, and that was a council in the northern part of Melbourne. I can remember having things like blue light discos, music festivals, other events that were focused around young people rather than just sort of a generic event. I suppose I'd put it to the four of you around, firstly, is council afraid of young people? And secondly, why aren't we seeing more that is done specifically to target recreation and events for young people beyond sort of support for sporting clubs? I'll also just pick up Frankston Community Notice Board has noted that Headspace is funded by Department of Health. That is correct. They are funded primarily by Department of Health, but they also run their services in partnership with Frankston City Council and Mornington Peninsula Council as well. So back to the question around whether or not council are afraid of young people.
I think it's hard to speak for the current council. I don't know personally or what their attitudes are. However, what I do know is I feel incensed on behalf of young people when I see things like, and it's not been this community, but a community I lived in a few years ago, where the local shop had a sign on the door that said only 2 school children allowed in the shop at one time. Now, I suspect the owner had issues with hordes piling in and light fingers taking things, and I don't know, whatever his issue was. But I do often feel that confrontational approach to working with any age group, actually, or any group in society, is just completely the wrong way of going about things. And I think, talking to people and inviting people in and or going to where they are and having conversations is a really important thing to do. And entering any debate on the basis of an anxiety, a fear, or a dislike, or says a lot more about your own vulnerabilities and being able to deal with a situation than anything. So, yeah.
Look, I think it comes under just a basic stereotype, and whether or not it's a reflection on the council or the community in general. And I know I'll put myself out there for saying it because I have been guilty of it too, is you make these assumptions about people, the young people, so they're up to no good. But I think the reality is that, as a council, as a community, we need to recognise that these people are our future. We need to listen, we need to hear them, we need to validate them, and we need to help them with change at a community level as well. And again, it comes back to what everyone's touched on, which is about facilitating. We need to be the vessel to facilitate, validate, and make those changes with them, not for them, not make unequivocal decisions for them.
Yeah.
It's about involving them in the process and having their participation all the way through.
I'm looking down at Brad and he's looking up at me. That's how it is on my screen.
Oh, I've got to go next if you like. So, yeah, look, I think, is council afraid of young people and youth? I think that's probably a little bit harsh. I don't think they're afraid, but I think there's room for improvement in the areas that I spoke about around engagement and coordination, and I think it's a lot more than just sporting clubs, and the council has to properly resource the type of youth coordinator type roles. We need to make sure they're actually doing their job, that we aren't just employing a person, therefore the box is ticked, therefore, end of story, that's our bit done. So look, I'd be looking, as a councillor, to get some kind of reporting. What are we actually achieving? What are we actually doing? Where are we heading? What have you done this month? What did you do last month? What will you be doing next month? Yeah, we have to actually, we have to have continual improvement. We have to make sure the people in those roles are actually making a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I would probably, I've got a question on my mind, which is, does council even have a baseline survey of the issues and concerns that young people that live in our city have? And given, and then how are we then using that to then measure improvements in that, whether it be about how well young people are being engaged, or how happy they are about the services that are provided to them, or the range of experience, or the range of experiences they have access to. I'd actually question whether or not we actually have a baseline from which we can improve.
I think you're right, Stephen. I don't think there's the baseline data and a plan there. And there's Brad and yourself, you're saying there's no sort of where are we, okay? What do we know? And what are we going to progress? What plan are we going to progress? Whether the council is afraid of young people, I wouldn't jump to that conclusion. I would, however, say that council is, in the eyes of young people, an authority. It's a local authority, and as soon as you say that, well, it's not. It's a bit of a mixed sort of a thing. I don't know that council's afraid, but certainly young people see them as an authority. I mentioned to the as a councillor, I think what we need is to understand young people, to try and understand them, be empathetic, to listen. That's part of all of this. I certainly, I've found the hard way. You don't go at loggerheads, you know, beginning teachers, if you like, you know, there's a little bit of a, oh, I'm unsure of myself, I have to act like an authority figure. It's not the way to do it. Sometimes, sure, you do, but by and large, you get performance out of people if you engage with them. So, and listen to what they need, and don't make assumptions. So next to, you know, I think a lot of people made assumptions about the skate park next to TAFE right there. It's next to TAFE, next to Park. Now, there was a little bit of trouble, sure, and, you know, I'm in a building that almost, you know, very close to the skate park. It really taught us to understand that there's often a little bit of trouble at the start. It settles down, and it's almost like the young people took charge of that area. They took charge of the skate park. It was really good to see. There's quite a mixture of, when I say young people, I can always say that about most people these days, but yeah, 20s, you know, young 15, 14, 12, I don't know, it's big families and huge range of age groups going there. There was a little bit of graffitiing, a little bit of tagging. Honestly, that was easy to eradicate quickly, and it just doesn't happen anymore. So I'm very pleased about that, but it brings to mind the other point of that. Skateboarding, yeah, I sort of gave up when I fell off about 5 times, and I said, no, I'll do other things. I'm envious of them. I actually have chats when I walk through there and say, look, gee, you know, I couldn't do it. Teach me. They say, yeah, sure. I said, no, my bones break too easily these days. But I hats off to them, and they're active. They're doing something. It's fantastic to see. And we can't be afraid of, as I think as Brad was alluding to, those different things. Okay, it's not just AFL. It's not just you know, football. It's not just some sporting thing. You know, I used to love going down to the softball with my daughter, and having played some baseball, I actually could teach her how to hit the ball, which is like a huge thing in baseball and softball. So, but getting participation, but not just sport, anything. And things that are new to us that we've never done much of, because it's emerging, some activity that's emerging. We have to accept that that's what they want to do. You know, it could range through to traditional chess to some kind of other you know, game that they might play, you know, finding things with their phone app or something, I don't know, all sorts of stuff. Be open to what they want to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there are simple things that could be done. You know, and take the skate park as an example. There's another one in Langwarrin. You know, there is an opportunity for council to also look at how it can make use of the facilities and things it already has. And if you were to kind of you could have a skate festival in Frankston. You know, I'm sure you could persuade some of the pro skaters to come down as well.
I think it's Olympic sport, is it?
I think it is Olympic sport. Now, it might be a trial sport in the Olympics.
Yep.
So there are things that we already have a lot of the facilities and ideas in Frankston already, but we just need a council that's going to drive those forward with young people.
Yep.
I'm looking over I'm leaning forward for it. I've got on my wall here all the very, very boring. Can you see it? Oh, no, I have to leave back.
Yeah, you're going to have to turn it at an angle. There it is.
There it is. All the strategic priorities for the council. That document. And I was just looking at it thinking, what if I had the lens of an 18 to 25-year-old? And I looked at all of those items on this document and thought, what if I was that age? what would it mean to me to protect and enhance the natural environment, for example, you know, in relation to business and jobs? How would I view it if I'm really just looking at a particular youth, from a youth perspective? How might that influence decisions that are made or consultation that's done to really engage different views? So it's not just about young people being given things to do or sorting out some issues that they're finding difficult, because we all find things difficult. But I just thought, in terms of, you know, the lifestyle and the sort of community we want to make Frankston be, you know, having discussions which are about the people that are impacted by them just not getting the job done, but just not opening a facility, but who is going to use it? What are they like? What do they really want? Yeah, that's what was going through on as we were talking.
That's a really interesting point too, because the forecast is that the number of young people aged between 12 and 24 living in Frankston is going to increase by 11% over the next 20 years. So there's a lot more young people coming in, either as part of families or independently coming into Frankston City's area. And to what degree are things like strategies and policies being developed incorporating the perspective of young people within them? And I suspect the answer is probably not many.
Not at this point. No, yeah. I don't think there is. I mean, there could be a lot done, a lot of activity. You know, young people are naturally curious. They want to try new things, and they just need some opportunities provided. And as I said, they have a lot of energy. The sailing clubs, etc. You know, trying to get people, young people, to sort of be engaged there, but a whole range of things. But I don't think there's a lot of planning done. We need to draw up better plans and actually progress something in an organised way, and have the feedback, of course, and review what we're doing.
Yeah, I had my son living with me for about 4 months during this lockdown before he had to go off to do some work. And it's really interesting. It's not often probably you get your 28-year-old to come home and live with you. You know, that was just the set of circumstances that we find ourselves in. And he might not necessarily be classed as the young set anymore. But even spending time with him, hearing his views and how he sees the world, or how he accesses information, or how he spends time, or even what time of day he's doing things compared to me. It's just there's a whole parallel universe, and that's just his age group. And I think it's very easy to become quite myopic and focused on what your needs are as a person, and there's a bit of a bandwidth around that. But you have to ask the people that are in that age or that situation or that time in life to really understand. And that takes a bit of time, but it's making that commitment to do that and recognising it's important.
Yeah, it's sort of my job in TAFE to do that. I'm there all the time.
Yeah.
But, but it's, and that's the interesting thing, because you hear all perspective. Just another quick interlude about the TAFE thing is that I've had in the same class people who are 18, and I had a lovely, elegant lady. She was 63, and they were doing laboratory science, laboratory technology. Now, you know, it was great to get that mixture, but they really enjoyed it too, because they connected across the age ranges. And I think that's a really important thing, that, as I say, that connection. But yeah, interesting, the 28-year-old coming home.
I'm glad you said that, Peter, because there's a comment from Oliver Hill, which I've been waiting patiently to bring out, because I think it's summed it up absolutely beautifully. Youth have enthusiasm and fresh ideas. Older people have wisdom and practical skills. Bring those elements together, amazing things can happen. And I think that's virtually summing up exactly what you've just said.
Yeah, well, I'd say well said, Oliver Hill. We're just into, you know, maybe self-congratulatory now. No, it's exactly it though, isn't it? I mean, and getting that connection is a big thing in my experience.
I know there's one of the other comments that Oliver Hill, obviously campaigning hard for the Westport, is that young people want to see, they want to see bands. They want to kind of have activities that engage them. And it sounds like Oliver's pushing very hard for a kind of wet and wild and the Westport type approach, but we'll see how he goes with that. It's about having that kind of variety of ways in which young people engage, and also when they are participating and getting involved in their communities, they want to do it in different ways. So the way in which I would have engaged as a young person, I was involved in the kind of local youth council and things like that. The way I engaged as a young person when I was 16, 17, 18, which wasn't that long ago, I might add. You don't have to look at it as thanks.
In dog years, maybe.
But there's a whole element to engagement now around digital. And so I talk to I've got 3 kids in my house. One's a young person, one's almost a young person, according to the demographic boundaries of that, and how they engage with their friends, their peers, each other, and the world more generally is very different. So when I talk to them about things like Facebook, and my daughter says, well, Facebook's for old people. And she's right, because they're not using Facebook, they're using things like Instagram and TikTok and things like that. And unless as a council, but also as, youngish through to slightly older members of our community, we actually understand and engage on their terms, we're never really going to be able to have that meaningful engagement and dialogue with them. And we won't really be able to reflect how they see the world or how they'd like to see the world be, unless we also adopt. So I'm kind of thinking about, that point around older people might have wisdom and experience and skills, whereas young people have enthusiasm and energy and so on. There's almost an opportunity for reverse mentoring there, where you've actually got younger people engaging with older people to get them up to speed with how the world now works. Because there are people that I even work with who are I grew up with computers, but there are people in my generation who really struggle with using basic technology, let alone some of the more complex technology that we now use. And I just, we talk about doing things with young people or for young people, but I'm just wondering around what the other things are that young people can bring to the older generations in our community.
I think we should have had some young people on this conversation with us, actually.
Well, what's the plan? What's the plan?
Are you in that 18 to 25 age range, are you, Justin?
Depends who's asking, Sue. I can be 25.
It's all relative, isn't it? It's relative.
Yeah. 25, 35, it doesn't matter. It's all just a number.
Nope.
No, sorry.
Go on, Justin.
About to say. No. I've forgotten what I was about to say. It was along the lines of an important note to point out is, and it's been a message, and we always praise Oliver Hill, but I'm going to have a bit of a go at Oliver Hill today on this point. I know there's a first.
Very brave there.
I'm thinking about running for the West Ward now. I might change. No, look, I think the important note is people making decisions for young people. Young people want this, young people want that. Well, who said?
Yeah,
I haven't heard a single young person say that this is what I want, and this comes back to the root of all the issue, which is about the communication, about the participation. And I guess when we start looking at a bigger picture, it needs to be on the basis of, it's going to be a really poor word to choose, but emotional intelligence, to make sure it's being received at a level that they can understand and they can relate to, and also on a shared level that we as older people can too, as a part of that overall participation model.
I think that's an excellent point. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think Brad was moving for the mute button or the unmute button. So
mute us.
Yeah, look, I think I've been listening to a lot of what we're saying here around engagement, and maybe what, I don't know if this has been tried before. I'm racking my brains. I don't know if we're doing it already. Yeah, but what about some old-fashioned community consultation with with
Yep.
youth. How about that? You know, we've talked about asking them what they want, right? So we know how to do it. The council understands or ought to understand how to do a proper consultation, not just with the whole community, but with youth. What do they need? What's missing? What's they have a terrific skate park, okay, and there's another one in Langwarrin, as you mentioned, and I urge anyone, if you haven't had a look at the Frankston skate park, to get down there and have a look. It's behind the aquatic centre, behind park. It really is. It really is impressive. But you know, it isn't just a question of doing that and declaring job done. So yeah, look, let's reach out to them. Let's try and engage in that way.
Yeah, I think you're right, Brad, because in my experience that you have to actually try to engage with young people. A lot of the time they're not naturally going to jump up at you and and engage naturally themselves. You have to try and facilitate that engagement, which I think is very important. So I definitely agree with that.
I mean, I remember when I was that age, and I don't suspect it's changed, but my view of the council wasn't anything that I was interested in. Right?
No.
It wasn't anything that I wanted to speak to those people in the offices up there, and what are they? I'll head to the. I'll head up to the Oval for a kick. I'll head to the pool for a swim. I mean, I wasn't inclined to reach out to the council for anything. So, has to be the other way around.
Yeah.
And it's got to be engagement on their terms. And Lydia Wheeler's just made a comment here, and there's some really good examples of this in other municipalities, and I've seen it as well internationally through my work. It's about getting young people to actually deliver peer engagement, and actually the most powerful tool you can have in terms of engaging young people is young people. And I look at some of the work that the young people working with Glenn Cooper are doing. I think it's Young People with a Purpose, Hannah Swinnerton and people like that, which is about getting young people to work with young people. And one of the things I would love to see council support is some kind of peer mentoring approach as well across Frankston. I'm conscious that we're heading towards time and it is quite late this evening. But the wrap-up question I want to ask each of you is, thinking back to when you were a young person and thinking about the prospect of potentially being on council, what's the one thing that you would say to your 18-year-old self now, other than vote for yourself?
Oh,
Ease up. Well, please don't drink so much. You'll pay for it later. My 18-year-old self, I think it's common. I don't think it's just me, but I'm going to put my hand up. I was young and stupid. I thought I was invincible. I thought I knew it all. I thought my parents know nothing, and how wrong I was. We've talked about as you age, you get wise, you get wisdom, and it is so true. So the one piece of advice I would say to my young self and to all the youth of today is listen to your elders, right? Listen to what they have to say in terms of their advice. I know you reckon they're all, out of it, stupid and disconnected, but, you can avoid a lot of mistakes by listening to older people.
Who's going?
okay. Shall I go? Well, yeah, I was just thinking, at 18, I had the opportunity to be a prefect at school. So I'd had sort of a bit of leadership experience. I'd been involved with the guiding organisation for a while and got armfuls of badges and did lots of things. So I got involved with quite a bit as a teenager at school and outside of school. And then went off to uni, and I think what would I say to my teenage self then? Or actually what I'd be asking for, what I'd say is just keep asking for help and support, because going out into the big wide world school was structured, there was a lot of structure for me up until 18, and then going off to uni, suddenly you're in this big, big free world, and I lived away from home. It was such an amazing experience, but also I think I kind of went off track at certain points during that first year or two, because there wasn't any good guidance, and I'd be, I don't know, looking for some good role models or some mentors, or just getting some support to do the things that I still wanted to do. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but I suppose maybe it's more what I'd like to say to young people out there. You have got a lot to offer. You probably have had a lot of experiences of life and can talk to a lot of things. Just keep that voice going and look for people to help you achieve what you want to do. Don't just be told what to do, or follow the crowd of people that are out there when you're in that big wide world. I don't know. We need young people. We need some young people. Yeah. So.
Your elders know more than your peers. I think that's it.
I don't know, Brad. I'd like.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
As somebody that's still a young person. No, look, I don't agree with listening to your elders, because we could sit here and argue in circles all night of some really, really poor examples of people that would be considered elders. I don't think that that's necessarily a say all and end all sort of comment. It's about surrounding yourself with people that make you want to be more than what you are. It's about getting involved and being the change rather than sort of raging against the machine. I guess that's my message to myself, if I could wind back, however long ago it was, and challenge yourself and always ask why. Why is not a bad question. It's absolutely a question as I got older that I'm not afraid to ask, and it's not a rude question. Why? It's validate where you're coming from. I think you can absolutely learn from the experience from people that are older than you. I don't discount that for a second, but I don't think it should be a sort of blind listen to them, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
And please don't take that as an attack, Brad. That's just the way I see it.
No, I'm not proposing that at all.
Yeah.
But you do need to listen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's too many young people that will just disregard, what the elders say. Listen, obey, not necessarily.
Well, look, thanks for that, Justin, because that's a great segue into what I was going to say as well. And don't take this as an attack, Brad. Okay, I know you won't. No, look, I think
we're going to have to give Brad a hug after this.
We will, but I'm going to give some. I'm going to be a bit giving by saying that the question was, what advice would we give to our 18-year-old self? So that's a bit of an individual question. We can generalise a bit if you like. I'll be particular and slightly general. In the particular, I would say, talking to my 18-year-old self, keep your determination, keep going, don't be daunted, all right, and make sure you form your own identity. And it's a bit sort of, as I say, Justin's was a good segue. Your own identity throughout life is very important. Start to form it as a young person and start to know who you are and where you're going and where you want to go. It's very important. As far as older people are concerned, we make, oh no, I'm not old. Yes, I am. We make mistakes, okay? So don't be unquestioning. I absolutely agree with Justin. And I think about the way I brought up my daughter. She's the high-powered solicitor now. I don't argue at all. I'll end up in court. But she questions. She's in the area of humanitarian law and international law as well. She's done extremely well. She was always asked a question. The only time I ever sort of said something to her to pull her up slightly, I thought that she might have been just repeating what I was saying, in my view. And I said, no, look, thanks very much, but you've got to do your own thinking, because what happens is when you're trying to put that point across, other people will test you. So you really have to know what you're talking about. Form your own view. If it's exactly the same as mine, well, that's great, but it may not be. It's got to be your own. So persevere, ask why. I agree with that. Question authority, because authority is not always correct, but do it sensibly, you know, but make sure you ask the hard questions for sure.
Right. Thank you very much, Peter.
Can I say one last thing, Stephen? Is that okay?
Of course you can.
I've written down a couple of keywords that, and I'd love to hear everyone's thought now, mindful of time. Just sort of summing up where I think a position based on what everyone said today, and including the comments, where I suppose as a council that we should be aiming towards, and it's facilitate meaningful relationships and facilitate participation to enact change.
Great.
Yeah.
I think that's summed up really nicely.
I could wholeheartedly endorse that.
Yeah.
I might just close by reflecting a bit on what I would have said to my 18-year-old self. Probably party a little less, but in seriousness, I think for me there'd be three things I'd say to my 18-year-old self. The first one would be tenacious. I think that young people take knocks quite hard. I think quite often they hear no far too often. That might just be peculiar to my house, but you know, it's just keep going at the door. The second thing I would say is find champions throughout your life, but particularly when you're a young person, is find people who are both inside your family, outside your family, inside your workplace, outside your workplace. People who are some of the people that Brad's described who have got a bit of experience under their belt, but find champions that are going to help you move through life, particularly as a young person and as you're kind of discovering yourself and discovering your way forward. And then the third thing I'd say is don't let anyone tell you to shut up, because you've got to make sure your voice gets heard. And far too often I've seen young people crowded out of conversations because they're regarded as young people. So that'd be the advice I'd give to my 18-year-old self. The one thing I have learned over the last few years since I was 18 is I've learned to contend with the fear of challenging people, and that's really important because not everyone's right all the time. And not everyone, there's an awful lot of people who aren't right most of the time. But that's my sort of final reflection. We're back on Friday lunchtime. 12:30 is our usual time. We haven't fixed our topic yet, but we are getting close to ballots arriving. So we're going to have a quick discussion after this call to just set that, and then I'll post that back up on our events page. But I'd like to thank all of you who've watched this evening, those who've contributed to the online conversation, and those of you who will be watching this afterwards. To the young people, this is the most important election that Frankston City Council's ever had. If this is the first time you're voting, make sure you think about who you're voting for. And it's time for a fresh start for Frankston. Yep. Thank you very much, everyone, and good night.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.